Thank you all for being so forgiving. This is my first time trying to fill Reverend Ron's shoes. So. Well, I think there's some brown people sprinkled in here, but it's actually hard for me to talk about white people with white people present. But here we are. Welcome, friends. I've spoken before about feeling left out and being treated differently. I remember in high school an event that left me angry, sad, and lonely all at the same time. Just another confrontation with the reality of my place in the world. You see, there was a required exercise for all students in my grade to reenact Ellis Island. I was berated when I didn't participate, leading me to having to talk with the principal. With him, I laid out the fact that my people didn't arrive through Ellis Island. My people were either already here or brought on slave ships. I reinforced my point by bluntly expressing how my last name is a slave name. It's the truth, and he shut up quick. I ended up having to do a different assignment, but I was alone. Growing up and learning history from a predominant white Eurocentric point of view created a real internal conflict for me. Our education system has always glossed over, sanitized, and sometimes completely bypassed the brutal realities of chattel slavery and the systemic generational decimation of American natives that forced a marginalized youth like me to split consciousness. As a kid, I was asked to stand every morning, place my hand over my heart, and pledge allegiance to a republic that historically sought to chain one part of my ancestry and entirely erase the other. The history I was taught scrubbed the bloodstains and designed a comfort for the descendants of the victors while rendering my own ancestors invisible. My body held an entirely different education, and individually I made attempts to teach myself with truth in layers. One layer of my ancestral memory remembers the sophisticated civilizations, advanced sovereign nations, and deep sacred relationship to the earth by my native ancestors. Long before the arrival of European slave ships, or European ships period, forced displacement and deliberate exposure to disease. Another layer carries the raw trauma, the miracle of survival, and the unyielding cultural contributions of African descendants who endured the horrors of the Middle Passage, the auction block, whips, chains, and discrimination, who went on to define the moral conscience, the democratic ideals, and the artistic soul of our nation. A third layer holds the vibrant, complex history of Hispanic communities, blending European, indigenous, and African roots through the generations of migration, border shifts, linguistic adaptation, and deep-seated community strength. Learning history through a lens that centers on the conquest of the colonizer and the dominance of the enslaver made the concept of patriotism deeply alienating to me. I hated it. I remember getting in trouble in high school again, taking stance by not standing for the flag way before it was a thing, writing history essays using the terms Caucasian and people without color in reference to whites. Even in my college papers, but I don't think that was even noticed. At that time, America felt like an empire of stolen land and stolen labor. The thought of claiming it, celebrating it, or wearing its colors felt completely contradictory to who I was. I was handed a mirror by a society that refused to reflect my face, demanding instead that I celebrate the historic violence enacted against my own people. I hated the hypocrisy of America's preached ideals of freedom, equality, and fundamental inherent rights as it practiced realities of oppression, segregation, and structural violence. It felt completely impossible for me to love a country that was built on the subjugation of my ancestors and remembered by a whitewashed narrative that offered no room for my reality. Despite it all, despite the immense weight of that history, the justified anger, and the whitewashed textbooks that tried to write me out of the story, I chose the military. Yeah, I was going to mention it like I usually do. So. It wasn't a betrayal of my ancestors or a removal of the teenager that raged against injustice. It was something far more radical, an unshakable claim to ownership of our country's future. I had the realization that this land belongs to the hands that built it and the blood that fertilized it long before it belonged to a single dominant narrative. Serving meant refusing to let the worst chapters of history define my capacity to protect the ideals of what this country could be. It was an act of unapologetic reclamation. I transformed my alienation into a warrior's commitment. By swearing an oath to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, I essentially declared that the future of this republic belongs to me and my people just as much, if not more, than anyone else. You see, true patriotism cannot survive on a diet of blind nationalism. It isn't cynically dismissing our flaws, especially when the political climate is what it is. Instead, it's a dedicated, humble, and loving commitment to one another, lived out through the interconnectedness of the vital covenant of our UU principles, which do not operate as isolated rules, they flow. All environment of faith and civic duty that can sustain us through the harshest political climates. It isn't right of our conscience and the use of the democratic, isn't the right of conscience and the use of democratic process the core structure of American society? Well, right now it's fractured. While a fragile sense of country might see opposition as un-American, a UU patriot sees peaceful dissent and open debate as essential to healing our nation. Carrying a heritage like mine that spans multiple marginalized groups, our existence challenges oversimplified political boxes some might try to put us in. As a UU, I think we understand intuitively that human worth cannot be construed by race, origin, or political affiliation. There are terrible things happening and people are dissonant and challenging the foundations of our country, seemingly without rational understanding. I had to explain to someone as bluntly as possible that an entity created by our government is literally hunting brown people. Citizens or not, I very much hold the fear that I could be taken for my appearance and the color of my skin. As we learn to sit with one another in the covenant of community, we are naturally propelled into a search for truth and meaning, an antidote to the political divides. It requires uncompromised honesty when counterfeit patriotism demands blind allegiance to a mythologized past or a rigid party line. For someone whose roots run deep with Black, Native, and Hispanic heritage. This search for truth is intimately tied to ancestral memory. When we anchor ourselves in the core of our tradition, it starts with commitment to every person's inherent worth and dignity, which flows into a demand for justice, equity, and compassion. In a hostile political climate, where neighbors are encouraged to despise one another over yard signs and voting records, doing our part is exactly here. I cannot accept a sanitized version of the American story because my family history lived the raw, unfiltered truth of it. A true patriot loves their country enough to look at its history and its current reality, having the courage to reject a singular narrative in favor of the complex, multicultural truth. This means honoring the painful histories of those who built it and preserved this land, acknowledging that our strength lies in our capacity to face our nation's shadow and evolve. It's okay to take pride in America. We have stood as a genuine beacon of freedom. A true patriot can access humbleness and humility, though. Acknowledge when and where that promise has fallen short. Compassion and equity cannot survive in comfort. They require a community built on acceptance and encouragement of one another's spiritual growth. If you haven't gotten it, I'm going through the principles. In a fractured democracy, this means learning to sit with our differences, expanding our understanding of what it means to be a neighbor again, and move past political tribalism and that dominates the news. When we strengthen the democratic process at home, our vision naturally expands outward towards peace, liberty, and justice for all. Directly countering the narrow isolationist nationalism and aggressive xenophobia, a humble patriot views our nation as a vital, responsible member of the global family. It's a global responsibility deeply tied to our immediate surroundings and the interdependent web of all existence. Our humility is what keeps that pride from complacency and self-righteousness. Humility is the quiet, steady voice that allows us to listen with empathy and solidarity. It allows us to ask, how can I understand your experience so we can make this country better together? How can we make our world a better place? Humility reminds us that we do not have a monopoly on righteousness. By walking in this way, patriotism ceases to be static label, a weaponized talking point on a TV screen, or a political slogan meant to exclude others from the American table. It becomes a living, breathing covenant. It transforms into an active spiritual practice of accountability, love, and determination. It understands that America is not a finished product to be blindly worshipped, but an ongoing sacred project to be worked on, challenged, and refined every single day. I carry a perspective that holds the rich, complex, and beautiful reality of Black, Native, and Hispanic identity. I proudly claim that I am a descendant of those that survived the Middle Passage, those who survived the Trail of Tears, and those who cultivated the Global South through generations of displacement and rebirth. I'll accept that I and so many others represent a full and broken circle of the American narrative. The resilience, the survival, the culture, and the absolute heartbeat. My bloodlines are a testament to the endurance that no empire, no policy, and no systemic oppression could ever erase. I am entirely allowed to carry a deep, resonant pride for who I am and for my service, and for my ancestors, and for the ideas of this nation, for the steps forward we have taken, and for the shared strength that keeps our communities running. That pride is valid. It is earned through sacrifice, and it is a vital fuel for the work ahead. I will never let anyone make me feel that my pride in my country diminishes my loyalty to my heritage, or vice versa. They are not opposing forces. They are part of the exact same powerful unfolding story. You too are allowed. Be an American who completely breaks the mold of the modern shouting match. Let pride walk hand in hand with a quiet, grounded humility. Let us be people who strive every day to be secure enough in our love for this country to admit its deep flaws, patient enough to listen to dissenting voice, and brave enough to change minds through truth, empathy, and lived experience. Do not let the hostility of the current political climate hollow out your compassion, make you bitter, or dictate your character. Again, I took an oath written by men who could not have envisioned me standing as its guardian. I evolved from a teenager who hated the nation's hypocrisy into a protector of its potential. That journey is not a contradiction. It is a triumph of maturity, love, and radical reclamation. I did not let my anger make me cynical. I let it fuel my commitment to service. I have earned the right to define what patriotism means on my own terms, completely free from the narrow, fragile definitions of others. You also have that right. We are not our elected leaders. Their embarrassment and shame does not belong to me or you. We are allowed to have a healthy pride in our country, a humble pride. Collectively, our principles describe what a true patriot is. Someone who balances a fierce commitment to the American promise with a radical, grounded humility. Our pride should be rooted in our capacity for collective action, our incredible historic resilience, and our enduring desire to make progress. It is the pride of knowing that despite every historical effort to divide, suppress, or erase us, we are still here, still fighting, still speaking truth to power, and still building and still believing in who we are. Our principles are all converge in our commitment to dismantle racism and oppression. This is the ultimate modern test of the American promise, especially now where issues are deliberately weaponized to divide us. It takes humility to look at our justice system, our economic structures, and even our own hearts, and admit where equality, systemic racism, and exclusion still damage us. A proud patriot doesn't deny these things out of defensiveness, fragile pride, or political convenience. Instead, they recognize that true love for this country and its people means working to heal these divides and dismantle these oppressions, creating a space where everyone truly belongs and where the promises of America are finally made real for every single citizen without exception. In a world that constantly demands you choose a side, tone things down, or fit your identity into a rigid, prepackaged political box, The most revolutionary thing you can do is to simply be kind, be considerate, be loving, and be you.